Okay. There we go. Oh, so let me do that again here. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to celebrate your achievements. We're going to be looking at your work today. So I'm super excited to go through the images that you guys have posted onto the Facebook group. Celebrate your achievements, give people feedback, and you can do whatever you want with that feedback. Because, you know, most of us are trying to get better and learn, and so this is one of the ways that is really helpful, is if you get feedback from somebody who's maybe been there and done that and has made all the mistakes as I have done as well. So let's get right into it. I do want to do a quick little reminder for anyone who's new to the channel that we do this, you know, once a month. Sometimes a little bit longer between episodes than others, but of course, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and if you want to participate in future episodes like this, join the Facebook group. The link's down below, and upload whatever it is you've been working on to the Facebook group, and I'll do my best to offer some insights. And if you want to support the channel with as little as 50 cents, $1 donation, that would be super helpful. Obviously, it takes me about 10-12 hours to put each episode together, so a little bit of change from your couch cushions helps motivate me to continue doing more of these. So, let's look at... oh, and just as a quick reminder, here's our Facebook group, and everything that's uploaded to here is there might be a few things that will come at the very end. So we're gonna go back to the last few things that where did we leave off? I think we left at Claude Monet, perhaps. I think this is where we were at last time. I don't. Is it possible there's only 2 people who did this painting? Maybe. I guess. That's all I see in the folder. So this goes back to, I think, October or November of last year, where we took a little bit of break and then we started up again. And we started by looking at work by Warhol, Monet, Picasso, Berthe Morisot, and then the group of 7, as well as Emily Carr and Thomson. So that's really the focus of today's episode. And then after we've looked at the work you've done in class, then we're going to look at all the stuff that has inspired you previously. So here we've got May's version of Claude Monet's painting. Oh, and I guess this is a slightly different one that Maria did as well. But they're similar, so we can kind of talk about them both here. But here's May's version. I love how this turned out, May. This is great. You know, one thing it really helps is having horizontal lines for the water and then vertical lines for the seaweed to really emphasize the depth of the water, the flatness of the surface of the water, but in the depth below the water. And this works really well. You really feel like those weeds are kind of going in behind these water lilies as they're sitting on the top of the surface. I do think we potentially could have gone even darker. There's a few darker areas that we could have pushed a little bit further, but I think pretty good. I'm really happy how this one turned out. Well done, May. And then we've got Maria's here. Again, it's a different painting altogether, but I am familiar with this one. This is like there are these kind of hanging, branches and leaves from a tree that's hanging over top of this Japanese pond that Monet built in his backyard in Giverny, and all that works really well. I can't remember how he did it. I don't know if there were gaps on the top here. My instinct would be to have those lines just go right off the top of the canvas, but maybe he did that himself. I don't know. Just so that it emphasizes that they don't just stop there, or they're not growing from the water, they're hanging from above. But I don't know, there's not a lot that I can offer here, especially since I'm not familiar with this work. I feel like I probably would have painted some of this area in the background just a little bit lighter to emphasize that it's moving further backwards into the distance. So I'm using more white and gray to muten the intensity of that paint, because the less intense, less saturated those colors are, the more they're going to appear to recede. But overall, I think this one's fantastic. Great job. Okay. How is this? This can't be possible that only one... Let me just take a look here. Okay, yeah, there are more. Let's... Paula... Does make me think, well... Well, maybe... Sorry, just capture... Okay, so it looks like we got 4... No. I guess we got 3 of them, so let's bring these up here. So here's Jillian's, Heidi's, and Paula's images by the Impressionist painter Berthe Morisot. And it looks like Paula's done a couple of them. So maybe let's just start right here with Paula's and look at them side by side here. So there's that version and that version. I suppose the main differences are we've got a darker table, maybe a little bit more blue, darker background on A. Again, I see A and B, and there's some the water in here is still yellow. Maybe that's the imprimatur coming through. You know, I like them both. They're both kind of quite different paintings, despite the fact that they are starting from the same place. You know, I like seeing some of that yellow, the imprimatur coming through. Some people don't, and one of the reasons why I like using any color there is it kind of can help us see very clearly where things might need to be done in order to kind of completely cover up the background. But some people prefer to leave a little gaps between the colors. And so this is an example of it. I think maybe that, well, that is a really intense yellow inside that vase that makes it seem, it's competing with the flowers. the brightness of that is competing with the flowers. So my instinct would be to kind of mute that a little bit, like we have here. Also, I mean, this vase is kind of a pink, kind of purpley vase, so it also kind of competes a little bit with the flowers. My instinct would have been to try to find another color, because we've got brown on the table, we've got greenish blue in the background, we've got pink as these flowers. So the vase, I would have leaned towards kind of like a whitish version of your background. So something like a maybe a like baby blue, perhaps, purpley color, something that's just that is different than the flowers, particularly because they're the stars of the show. You know, it's sort of like you know, if you show up to a wedding, you're not the one getting married, but you're in a big white gown, right? It's sort of like, it causes a little confusion, right? So the star, I would say, are your flowers. So how can we make the flowers really shine, I think is the... But I mean, the paintings, they're well executed. I'm just, as I always say, just sort of nitpicking and trying my best to help give people some solutions. Here's Heidi's version. This turned out great, Heidi. I like the texture that's under. I almost feel like, there might be something underneath, a different painting perhaps that you've painted over. And that's kind of, that would be some fun thing for a future curator to examine. Again, we have a little bit of the imprimatur coming through, and I think in this case it really gives the painting that kind of a glow. There's like a glow emanating from things in these little gaps between the colors, which, you know, is something that I really like, and at least in my own artwork, and you see me doing it in these classes all the time. So I think this works really well. It's that texture in the background, you know, could be a little bit distracting, like maybe, you know, where it kind of crisscrosses into some of the flowers. It's not a make it or break it thing. It's just something just to be kind of aware of. I mean, ideally that texture is complementing the forms rather than competing or contradicting them. But it is also kind of nice to see how it really activates the background and makes that really interesting. That's great. I really like how that turned out, Heidi. And then Jillian, wow. So in here we've got a lot of white. I almost feel like there's too much white, like especially on the flowers. I would lean towards a little bit more fully saturated pinks and reds in the flowers themselves. I mean, obviously this, maybe you decided, well, I don't want a pink flower, I want a little bit more of a lighter, almost a white flower, which is fine. But if that was the case, then my instinct would be to try to mute the background a little bit, make it a little bit more gray, a little bit darker, just to kind of create more contrast. You know, like one of the things artists will talk about is a painting, like if we convert a painting into black and white and it still works, then it's a like really strong painting. It's sort of, it's got its armor on. It can defend itself really well. It can stand up on its own really well. Versus if a painting sort of is all one value level, like if we turn it to black and white and it kind of stays mostly everything kind of fades together, that's often a bit of a problem. So I mean, we can just kind of see here. If we were to go to color, all right, so this is just in preview that comes with the Apple computers, and if we have this slider here for saturation, Just slide that down. So that's actually not bad. Actually, I'm actually surprised at the amount of differentiation in this painting. So what that tells me is that your values are pretty good. The thing is I think we want maybe a little bit more of a difference between the colors that represent those values. So perhaps just something maybe a little bit more, I don't know. Maybe it is fine. I don't know. But it looks good. I mean, I like the way it's painted a lot. That's great. These are 3 excellent paintings to get us going here. I feel like maybe I'm going to continue going here with... Now we're going to get a ton of Picasso works showing up here. No. Okay. Well, let's just go to the ones that I do have copies of here. So another painting we did here was as a Picasso painting called Woman Turned Right. And I really like this Picasso painting because not only is it very vibrant and colorful, but it's also a relatively easy painting to do. So this is one of the paintings I also recommend for a beginner painter. All the paintings we've looked at so far. So here we've got Kathy's, Leslie's, Paula's, and Richard's. Wow, these are all very strong. Where should we... It's so funny how they're the same painting, but they look so different. Maybe let's start here with Richard's version of the painting. What I like here, Richard, is how nice and clean these lines are, especially like right here on the face, that dividing line between the left side and the right side of the face. It's really nice. That serpentine line is very satisfying. You know, the way Picasso painted these paintings is very similar to the way you've also done your background, these lines, where his were even more immediate than yours. His were pretty kind of sloppy, to be quite frank. I do sort of wonder what this painting would have looked like had you approached this rather than Picasso, but done those yellow lines with the same kind of careful approach that you did some of the lines on the face. But that's, I mean, just out of curiosity. But I think this one is super effective. That looks really nice, including some of the darker reds in the hat and in the background. Really beautiful. There's Paula's version. Wow, Paula, that is wild. So what's kind of cool is that this painting, by you drawing it out by eye and then painting it like this, it really transforms into something kind of almost completely different. I mean, you've painted, rather than yellow stripes in the background, we've got red and black stripes. Even the kind of the abstraction on the face has been changed quite a lot. Like this really, I mean, I didn't even really... It's interesting. So, you know, we see this side of the... Looks like that nose is kind of turned. So, you know, one of the things with a Cubist painting is showing multiple perspectives simultaneously, right? So we have arguably the side here on the left. I guess that's my right, but whatever. On this side is kind of appears to be looking forward, versus the other side appears to be kind of turned looking that way. And or also looking forward. It becomes kind of ambiguous, which is a big part of the pleasure of those Van Gogh, or Picasso paintings. But what's interesting here is the way that this is abstracted. This really starts to feel like a different fragment itself, this face here. So it feels like we've actually fragmented the face even more than the original Picasso, which I like. All these shapes start to become very strange and disconnected. So that's one of the advantages and disadvantages of drawing without using the templates. It's way more likely to have a distortion that would happen, a change from the original to your own artwork if you're drawing it out by eye rather than using any sort of device or template to transfer that image closer to one-to-one. Very cool. Let's keep on going here. Here's Leslie's. Let me see, that is really dark. I wonder if I can brighten this up a little bit. I feel like that's probably closer to the original when we strip away some of the yellow in the photo. There might still be a little bit more blue and things here. But that looks pretty cool, Leslie. I like how this painting turned out. It looks like... Leslie says, catching up with some lessons that's done in my style. Ugly. Sorry, Michael, but I haven't got the patience to do better. I think it turned out fine. I think this is great. I mean, I think, you know, using an outlining, whether a Sharpie or a Posca pen, sometimes maybe not outlining everything is a good idea. Because, you know, if let's say we go back to this version that Richard did, you could see that there are some areas of the face are outlined with black, some are outlined with red, and then some are just left on their own, like where this yellow and the red touch, or the red and the blue touch, or here in the face there's a bunch of areas where there's no the shapes are not contained by black lines. Versus here, it's like you've gone around and outlined everything, which is, there's nothing wrong with it per se, it just makes it a little bit different. And what I would suggest, you know, like we see a bit of that in the background, where the background, let's say, you know, you have an outline around the yellow, and, you know, in here, what that does is it really creates a separation between the background and the foreground, because the background is not outlined, the foreground is outlined, so there's that separation. I would argue that part of what Picasso's doing, however, is playing with, you know, those different spaces or planes. That's a big part of Cubism, is these different, you know, like surfaces, and where do they exist? It's kind of, there's a flattening of space, and where the space is expanded, sometimes it's a little bit nonsensical. So for instance, you know, like this green shape, is that in behind everything, or is that her hair? Like, is it in behind this black in these lines, right? So, you know, that can be kind of a satisfying part of some of these pictures for some people. That little bit of ambiguity, a little bit of confusion. Sometimes a little bit of confusion is a good thing, like whether it's in a TV show or a movie, it can keep people on their toes. Sometimes we have too much of it, and people are just like, I don't know what I'm watching, turn it off, I'm going to bed. Right? Or the opposite, like, oh, this is like, it's written for a 5-year-old. Oh my goodness, it makes the author thinks I'm an idiot. Like, I want something that's a little bit more challenging. So, and so it's really hard to find that exact right line. But I think this they're just very interesting, very different approaches. And then here's Kathy's version. Wow, that's also really beautiful, Kathy. I don't know what I can offer that hasn't already been said. I think there's, some of this like baby blue, I feel like is stronger than in the original, but I kind of like that. It makes for a little bit more of a clash between the blue and the red in the best way, in that when blue and red are in similar sort of value, they appear to like really vibrate, like they create that optical illusion where sometimes we even start to see other colors in between them, etc. So I like kind of just feel like you dialed up those colors, the brightness of that color a little bit. That's wild. I don't know what else to say. It's even too like the way that in here in the background, this line between the dark red and the regular red is almost a little bit fuzzy. And what's kind of interesting about that is how it really pushes that backwards. Like it's almost like I look at it and I'm like, my eyes, why does that look out of focus? And often, especially since the advent of photography, we take things that are out of focus to mean that things are in the background, right? So it really pushes that space further back. So that's, yeah, very cool. Look at all the people in the chat there. There's Paula and Lolly, Deborah, Leon, Pascaline, and Kunkida. Wow. Awesome. People from all over the world. Leon says, good morning, y'all. So, where are you? Where it's the morning. Where would it be morning right now? Is it, I'd be like Eastern Europe, maybe? Africa? Or is that already, or is that too early? Would it be like 1 or 2 in the morning kind of thing? Maybe India? The Middle East? Every time I think about the fact that there's people from all over the world participating and painting along, I can't believe it. That's so cool. Okay, so let's tiptoe forward here. I do want to see. Let's see. Okay, I thought there was. How did I miss these? Oh, I have to do the Instagram as well. Okay. Okay, so we got 4 of these versions of Andy Warhol's portrait of Marilyn Monroe. Wow, okay. Where should we start? Let's... Each one is so different. That's so fascinating. That's why I love seeing these side by side. It blows my mind to see the same image interpreted in so many different ways. So maybe we'll start here with Kathy. What can I say here? I think you've done a marvelous job. Yeah, I think you've done great. I mean, like the one thing that I often will tell people is be careful when painting teeth. That you want to be, if anything, de-emphasize teeth or really barely paint them at all. The more you detail teeth in, even if that's the way it looks like in a photograph, it can really make someone's like teeth look really fang-like or monstrous and stuff. So, you know, you just be careful. I think you've done a pretty good job. Although I would have even gone just a little bit softer, like a little bit more of like a black with medium in it, matte medium, glaze medium, or water even, just to make it more transparent. I also would have probably put a little bit of a highlight, a little bit of white, which I know Warhol did not do. They're pretty dark, his versions of those eyes. I think that would probably give a little bit of extra life back into her her portrait. But I think you've done an excellent job, like with the nose, the lips, the hair is fantastic, and even this shading on the side of her face. Not sure. It looks like you've used maybe like glazing fluid or matte medium to thin it out, which, you know, it's worked really well. I also like how you painted this dark black over top of color for her neck. Often when I see people paint this, they'll just paint this skin here and just paint this a solid black right over top of the imprimatur or something. And I always advise, like, well, there's skin there, so maybe there's a little bit of skin that shows through in that shadow, so it's not just like a black necklace, but it's just a shadow on the neck itself. Really great job. And the hair, I think you've done fantastic. These little kind of areas of lighter black and then the solid dark areas of black. Great job. Let's keep on going. Let's look at Paula's version. We have a little bit of a reflection there, and but I think we can kind of get a pretty good idea how the rest of the painting is working. I think that's fantastic. So same sort of thing with the teeth, just being careful with those teeth going forward. I like that you've articulated the nose, although what I would say, often artists, especially when they're painting or drawing female figures, will de-emphasize like the whole bridge of the nose. When it comes to drawing a male face, you can go wild on the nose. You can make the nose look as big and wrinkled and shadows all over the place. That will actually make that figure look more masculine. So, you know, things on a masculine face, you want to maybe emphasize or overemphasize the nose and the jaw, maybe eyebrows, but you want to de-emphasize eyelashes and lips in particular, right? So you might make the lips thinner, less dark, maybe not outlining the lips, just letting the color do its thing. Certainly not doing the bottom eyelashes, and maybe turning the top eyelashes into just one dark line, like so it's just the whole eyelid, or where the eyelashes would be is just one dark line. So pretty much do the exact opposite on a female face. So you would de-emphasize the jaw, you would de-emphasize the nose, and sometimes the eyebrows, depending. But you would overemphasize the lips, overemphasize the eyelashes, and coloring around the eyes, and all those kinds of things. Now, again, those are conventions that, you know, and especially today, people challenging gender norms and roles, all that stuff, they're open to someone doing something really clever and unique with that. But I'm just saying that's, you know, strategies artists have used for the ones I'm talking about specifically for about 200 years, and things have kind of been different even in the past as well. So it's always ripe for someone to kind of challenge that as well. But great job, Paula, as well. Sketching this out without using any template is amazing. There's Jillian's version of Marilyn Monroe. That is great. You know, very different approach than both Paula and Yasmin's. Which word? Yeah, which word did we start? No, with Kathy, right? Yeah, we started with Kathy, Jillian, Paula. So Jillian. So this looks like, you know what's kind of nice? This almost looks a little bit like a an oil painting. The way that you've applied the paint. I'm assuming there's some sort of medium mixed in there, which gives it a really fluid quality. It really looks like there's a lot of confidence in the way that this is painted, with these really kind of fast, quick brushstrokes. Right? That's to be able to paint a portrait and to be almost like flicking your brush that you're going so quick. That's really exciting to see. That just, you know, the confidence, the fearlessness to apply paint in that manner. And I think it's worked really effectively. You know, this is what I was talking about, just those little highlights in the eyes. I was talking about Kathy's painting here. Now, again, I understand that there is a little bit of blue, and the way Warhol did this was the blue is very subtle in there. And I know that because I was just teaching people how to paint this painting today, so it's on the top of my mind. But you could see the way that little bit of blue painted in over top kind of acts like a bit of a highlight. So, let me see. That imprimatura is coming through in the eyebrows, a little bit in the nose, and I understand that's probably the way you painted it. I don't mind it with the eyebrows or around the eyes. That's effective. Around the tip of the nose, maybe we could have added a third color there. I mean, often what the thing people try to do with this painting often is they paint the face and then they paint the black and then they feel like they're going to touch it up, so they mix another color trying to approximate the same color on the flesh for the face. And then they start painting and it doesn't quite match, and then they start panicking and start painting the whole rest of the face, and before you know it, it's sort of getting out of control. So I don't think you should do anything there, but just one thing that you could do is use some matte medium or glaze medium or slow dry medium, mix that into, let's say, this your flesh tone, and you could paint that whole color over the entire face, even over top of all the pencil lines. And because you've mixed a medium in there, it's going to be more transparent, and those lines should show through a little bit. Depending, the more medium you put in there, the thinner that paint will be, the more transparent it'll be, the easier it'll be to see those lines. And then you don't have to worry about leaving big gaps like that, so that you know where to put your black outlines. But I also think, like, the more experience you have painting, the more confident you will feel about just ignoring the guidelines and just sort of painting wherever you want, right? But this is great. Yeah, I mean, this shows like a leap forward in confidence. That's really exciting. And then here's Yasmin's version. That's wild. Interesting. Kind of like a different personality. A few things. One is, I think what we need here is to go even darker. Like, so for instance, taking your black and getting even darker underneath her jaw here. Getting even a little bit darker on the sides of her face. Getting even a little bit darker around her eyes and under her nose. On her lips, over those earrings. Around the side of her neck. Which, you know, I totally understand why people often don't go so dark, because it can feel kind of scary applying black or really dark colors. You really feel like you're putting yourself out there. It's like, oh, I don't know. Once I put it there, I'm kind of stuck. But I think first of all, you've now demonstrated that you can do this painting really well. So perhaps trying to do it another version, maybe just leaving this one aside and painting another one. It might only have taken you a couple hours to do that. So trying it again and really giving yourself permission to break out the black or mix a really dark black and paint it into those darker areas. And I think you'll find it actually will turn out even better, because it'll create more dimension. The space will look more three-dimensional once you really push the contrasts a bit more. But I mean, I think I actually really like how this painting turned out. I'm just thinking how, because I often think like maybe people are, I never really know why people are submitting their works. Maybe they're submitting works because they're really unhappy and they want feedback, or they're really, really proud of their work and they just want some congratulations. So I try to kind of give a little bit of both. I mean, I think anybody who's doing any art is doing the world a favor, and I think you all deserve congratulations. But if you're looking for just that little bit of how to make it just a little bit better, then that would be my advice. Also, now that I'm just looking at her eyes, they appear like this eye on the, I guess, the left-hand side is a little bit bigger than the one on the right. My instinct would be to make the eye on this left here a little bit smaller, and the way to do that would be, let's see, where would we? I think it would just be putting a little bit more black in here, just like we've got under, like, the way Warhol painted this is there's a lot of black around these eyes, and the eyelids are creating this big shadow down there. So I think it's just a matter of adding a little more black, and because it looks like she's looking, I guess it would be that or that direction. Yeah, she's looking that way, right? So I think if we paint the inside of that eye, because this eye's already looking this way, I want that eye also looking that way. If we painted it really dark over here, then it's going to make that eye look like it's going that way. Right? But again, other things you can do. Okay, so let's say you're a little bit unsure of what to do, especially when it comes to eyes. Getting the eyes to look like they're pointing in the same direction is very tricky. One thing that I'll sometimes do is I'll just take a little bit of paper, like colored paper, or just take some paint and color a white piece of paper, and then cut out a shape, and then you can just lay it down on top of your painting. Either ideally if the painting's already dry, or that paper's going to stick. And then you can kind of see, like if I put a little black shape in here and step back, are the eyes now looking in the, or are they kind of going in different directions? And then you just sort of move it off to the side. And then once you're happy with it, you could take a little picture on your phone so that you can see what you've done, or just remember and peel that piece of paper and put paint in its place. Says cool. Great, excellent work, you guys. So, where should we go to now? I do think I thought Paula, I knew Paula was gonna do one of these. Oops. Okay, so another artist whose work we looked at was Alexander Archipenko. And Archipenko was a Ukrainian sculptor, really one of the great sculptors of the early middle 20th century, and a huge inspiration to people like Picasso, Marcel Duchamp, Duchamp Villon, Brian Cousy, all those kinds of figures. And so as part of my effort to highlight Ukrainian artists over the past year, because for obvious reasons, and also because I'm of Ukrainian descent, I wanted to focus an episode on Archipenko. And so what we did is we did a painting based on one of Archipenko's sculptures. So, and this one I really felt turned out really well. I know some of the comments were like, why are we painting a sculpture? This is strange. But I thought it turned out really, really well. So here's Paula's version of that sculpture. I think you've done a pretty good job here, Paula. One thing that kind of really stands out to me, though, is that the background kind of changes. See this line that is maybe a horizon line, or the table in behind? Notice how if we kind of follow that line all the way across, it should pop out here, but you've got it coming a little bit lower. So this is a fairly easy fix. Really what we could do is just take a darker color and then just paint it over top of this lighter color, or take a lighter color and paint it over top of this darker color. Whichever one works, whichever one's easier for you. Also, you know, I think, you know, if we're going to use black for the figure in the foreground, which we want to use because black is going to come right forward. So you want to reserve pure black for the things that are closest to us, and then start adding a little bit of white to that black to make it gray, and that's going to pull things backwards. So rather than having to rely on a white outline to create a separation between the foreground and the background, think about painting the background with just a little bit of a lighter black, not quite as dark and dominant, so that that will make the black of the figure in the foreground pop forward, right? And I think maybe the way that I painted this is, I think I painted this, maybe even used a little bit of a, like, modified my blacks, because, you know, I like to mix my own black. So rather than just making both of them pure black, I think I might have made one a little bit more purpley, and one a little bit more blue, one a little bit more red, and even that. So if I could, so you can make a black, and then you could add a little bit of purple, or cold blue, and then put warm blue in the black in the foreground. Those kinds of things also work to help create that separation. Excellente. Okay. So next I want to look at the work of Emily Carr. And this paint, I love this painting that Emily did. Wow, look at all these different versions here. Maria, Emily, Paula. Where do we start here? Wow, and they're so different. Kathy, Heidi, Maria, Molly, Paula. I mean, I just think it's so neat to just flip through those. I'm not, that strobe effect causes somebody to have a heart attack. What do I want to say about these? Well, let's start here with Paula's version. I think you've done a great job here, Paula. The one thing I feel like there's a little bit of the sky that maybe just the way that you photographed it, but there's the sky is also a kind of an interesting part of this painting. So right now we just have the ground and the trees. really what's exciting about this painting by Emily Carr is that at this time she's living on Vancouver Island near Victoria, and she's living in this trailer that she calls the Elephant. And that elephant is every few months she gets somebody with a tractor to move it around the island. And where she was at this time was kind of like on an area that was facing the ocean, and it was really windy. And so you can really, like, in Emily's painting, you just get the sense of that wind is it's not just it's not an invisible force. It's like a physical, it's like a creature or an animal moving through the landscape, and she's really visualizing the movement of the wind as it whips through the grass and the trees and goes into the sky and causes the clouds to scatter. And so by not having the tips of these trees in the sky there, I think lessens the force of that of the wind. Now, as I said, it's entirely possible that I'm just not seeing the tops of these trees and stuff there, but just something to kind of consider if you were to, if you hadn't, kind of thinking about adding that back. But I do like the way you painted the house here. I like the houses, and then the little fence there. Often people forget that fence, and these stumps and things here. I like also how these trees do appear to be bending, which is not the way necessarily everybody even painted that, but it does give the sense that, like, things are right, they're bending over because the wind is so strong. We'll look at Molly's here. That's excellent, Molly. Same sort of thing. We really feel that wind in the grass and the trees, in particular the sky. I almost feel like in the grass we want just maybe a couple of extra colors, or just changing the value of this green so that we get maybe a few darker patches and a few maybe even lighter patches, some that have got a little bit of orange in them, brown, more blue, more yellow. Because I really love what you've done with the trees. Like that, you've really completely captured Emily Carr's way of painting the trees in a really effective way. The grass, almost there, not quite. It looks like you painted the grass much faster and didn't give it quite as much attention as you did the trees. So just sort of balancing that out, I think would be nice. But otherwise, it's really, really strong. Like, I mean, those trees, that is right out of Emily Carr's playbook. That looks like you were channeling her a little bit there. That is amazing. That's awesome. Here we've got Maria's version. Wow. I mean, what I was saying before about having a little bit more of those colors in the grass, I think is really effective. I think you've got all the colors bang on perfect. I do think maybe we could learn a little bit from the way Molly painted this painting. We see, like, there's an aggressiveness to these brushstrokes, and yet they're kind of curving. They're, you know, we get the sense of like things bending and you know, the wind snaking through, versus the way that here these are kind of more straight, more rigid lines that maybe don't quite convey the fluidity of the way that Emily Carr painted the wind. So similar, there's, you know, as like everyone, there's sometimes each one of us has a few things that are stronger than others and a few things that we can work on, but I think this turned out really effective. I'm really happy. I think the way you've especially painted these buildings back there, that turned out really nice. And that big tree. Excellent. Heidi's version. Wow. I love that orange. That just, you know, this feels like there's the cause of this this scene is like a blazing forest fire over top of those trees, which is very true to what's actually happening right now. There are forest fires all over the all over Canada. I was going to say Northwest, but out in Quebec and Ontario and the Maritimes as well. I mean, that orange is definitely is more than what Emily herself did. But I like how that turned out. It feels like ferocious, like an intensity that it's not just the wind, but it's like it's almost like we have these double elemental forces. The wind rushing right into the middle of the painting, and then it's like hits that fire, and then boom, right? That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that you've added a little bit of white back into and between some of these lines in the trees, just to kind of create a little bit of separation, to kind of clarify things a little bit, because it's easy for that just to go become a blob. So separating that, giving a little extra definition, I think is nice. I think in every painting we've seen so far, these stumps could use a little bit of extra work, maybe darkening one side, lightening one side, adding, either a darker or lighter place on the top of those stumps so that we can see where it was chopped, because it's not necessarily clear what's going on here. Now, Emily Carr herself, I think Emily Carr is arguably the greatest Canadian artist of all time, and so she was a genius. She was a master. And she's able to do things with just a few brushstrokes that most of us require hundreds of brushstrokes to do. Just like great poets can say, a novel in 4 or 5 well chosen words. So, but that's the thing is just observing how these great masters do it and seeing if we can what we can learn from them. And here's Kathy's version. Cool. So everything that I've been saying, I think applies here as well. I like there's lots of different colors in the foreground. I think maybe even just a little bit more curving lines, like in the foreground, in the same way that we have in the trees. The shapes of the blue hanging in the sky are very solid. And so I kind of feel like I want them to be broken up into less imposing flying saucer-like shapes, and just into just like the sky kind of poking through the clouds kind of thing. Kind of like we see how Heidi's done that here. Again, you could take a little bit of maybe your background color and just a little bit of white or something, and just break up those shapes just a little bit. Let's see. Here we've got Maria did similar thing, just sort of painted white over top of that. Molly's also done something similar. And we can't really see with Paula how you handled that. But these are great. No, I just want to see, is there... Make sure I haven't missed anything here. Okay, so let's push on here. Let's look at our next artist. Well, so I love these Emily Carr versions. They're like gorgeous kaleidoscope waves. Amazing job. Cool. Okay. let's see, we got... It's so interesting too. Today I was teaching people how to paint this painting in person, and so it's another painting I'm very familiar with from recent, very hyper recentness. So let's see. Where should we start? We got Kathy, Maria, Molly, Paula, and Richard. Let's go up to start with Kathy this time. So I think this is great, Kathy. I really like how a few things I think are working particularly well here. I like that you included a little bit of kind of slightly peachy orange color back into the painting, because that's actually probably the plywood or pine panel that he's painting on that is kind of showing through. So I like that you noticed that detail and decided to bring it back. Now we could have made like an orange brown imprimatura, painted that on the painting to start and just left that color showing through in various places, or you can kind of fake it out by painting it on later on. Either way, I think is fine. What that does, though, is it helps kind of create a mirror effect of similar colors in the sky that are also in the water down below. And I think that's really important, and often something sometimes people forget is, you know, that the sky is reflecting the water and the water is reflecting the sky. And so that there's, even though they shouldn't ever be exactly the same color, we kind of want a little bit of each of their colors, you know. So you want a little bit of the water color in the sky, and you want a little bit of the sky color in the water. So by using that imprimatura, or allowing the imprimatura to show through, or faking it out later, it makes it look like that color is in both places as other color as they should be, right? But it's just kind of a really clever way of that here Tom Thomson is using his imprimatur, or just the raw wood showing through. So that I think is effective. What I think is most effective is the way that you've painted these trees is really fantastic. I mean, I don't know how you're doing that, just tiny little mini brush strokes, but it really has the effect of giving us some of the texture of those trees. And, you know, there's a lot of trees, and there's millions and millions of leaves there, but the way that you've painted that makes it is a really great stand-in for the complexity of those big bushes or trees, or clumps of foliage. So that is super effective. Also, I would say, you know, I think the original painting looks like it was done either like at sunrise, sunset, or because the sky is really dark because it has just rained or it's just about to rain. Whereas you've added a lot more white and really lightened the scene up. So that also makes sense, that we would see more detail in these trees. You know, the original, these are almost basically black silhouettes because the sky is so dark. So I'm actually pleased that because the sky is so light, you're actually showing us more detail in the trees. Because if the sky was as light as this, but you had painted these trees and these islands as black as Tom did, it would look kind of weird. It would look kind of like a Rene Magritte surrealist painting where the sun is out, but everything below is really dark, and it's kind of, it's a very, it's called the Empire of Light. It's an iconic painting where there's kind of a mismatch between the brightness of the sky and the street down below, which should also be bright, but it's like midnight. So that's how, you know, it's a clever surrealist little trick here. But so it makes me happy to see that you noticed that and you decided, well, I like my sky. Maybe I gotta brighten up those trees to make it all come together. Well done. I would say you may want to think about adding something darker in this near shore, making the near shore like basically a black or really dark warm blue, because that is the closest thing to us. So it should certainly be darker than that far shore. It should be darker than anything else in this painting, so that it really feels like it's right up on the edge, you know, right at, you know, as if maybe if, you know, you could see your own foot there if you kind of raised it up a little bit, that it's, you're right there on the edge of the shore. Maria's version here, you know, it's so, I mean, like, same painting, but they look totally different, right? So you've darkened the sky, as I was just mentioning. So because the sky is darker, now it makes sense for these the foliage in these islands to be silhouetted, that it's much harder to see any texture or detail in those areas. I don't know what to add. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, I suppose what I would say is potentially it would have been nice to have a little bit of this teal aquamarine color appear in the sky in just a few little places. Again, and also maybe to bring a little bit of these purples and have them in the water as a little bit of slightly grayish purple or grayish teal in the clouds. Again, just so that they're not two totally distinct spaces, that one's on top of the other and light is bouncing off back and forth. Otherwise, fantastic. And maybe you don't have to do anything at all. Just something to think about maybe going forward is balancing the picture with a little bit of one color on the other. Like I was saying today, it's like, think about, like, if you ordered a pizza and you ordered a pepperoni pizza and it arrived and all of the pepperoni was on one side except one pepperoni, or there's no pepperoni at all, and you're like, but this is a pepperoni pizza, why has only one side got pepperoni in it? Right? You kind of want maybe to spread it around, or at least have a few more pepperonis on the other side of the pizza, so it just feels a little bit more balanced. Wow, Molly. I mean, that looks totally different than everybody else's. I love how you did the sky. It's so wild and very evocative. Like, there's a lot of movement there. The one thing I would say is it's super stylized, and there's nothing wrong with doing something that's stylized, but we've kind of lost a little bit of its volume. Like, it becomes ambiguous as to, like, where the cloud is, or what's the cloud, what's the sky, like where, like, one of the things that Tom is doing is we've got some of these kind of striations of purple there that kind of help define that cloud as it's going further back into space, and I kind of feel like I want a little bit of that. A little bit of just little bits of darker purple there, and a same sort of thing again, putting a little bit of the color in the water into the sky and vice versa, I think would be nice. Because this one, you know, because the sky is so much lighter, it makes sense that we would see more of the trees, that we see the green of the trees, and that they're not just a big black shape. And so, you know, I think we would want a little bit of this green coming into the sky and a little bit of the sky coming into the water. Now that green is really green. Like, I think we kind of might want it to go a little bit, put a little bit more blue into that green to make it go a little bit more aqua, I mean, I don't mind it, and it's just having that consistency, that balance. If we had a little bit more of that color in the sky, I think it would be totally fine. Paula's version. Wow. I mean, the this effect of this glitter or whatever that's floating in the air. Yeah, I mean, it does make it a little harder to see imagine what the painting would look like without it. But okay, so you know what I like, what's working really well here is, even though we've got like mostly purples and blues in the sky, and then we've got these teals and greens and blues in the water, because we have that similar blue in both places, that creates a nice balance. The sky can be its own, can be purple and blue, and the water can be blue and green, and yet there's that blue that's in both places, and so that works really well. They complement each other, and that's a great way of just, having the same, like a little bit of the same color in both places. I also think that the foreground should be darker. Really, this should be the darkest place in the entire painting, is right in the foreground. It should certainly be darker than these mountains that are furthest away. These, I mean, that's really dark. I would go for something a little bit more gray back there. And I think we could have, the sky could be a little wilder, a little bit more volume in those clouds. And I'm just nitpicking here, but I think there's a lot of great stuff that you've got going on in this painting. So we're very close to making it even more outstanding. And then Richard's version here. Wow. So I think everything we've been saying so far also applies. I think it would be nice to have had a little bit of the color in the water appearing in the sky and vice versa. I don't know how much you'd want to, because there's a lot of stuff working really, really well here. I mean, it might be probably the easiest thing to do might be just to take a little bit of this color, this cool blue, and put just some really light streaks going into the water, some little reflections of that in these rocks in the foreground, darkening the foreground a bit. I think you'd want to be very careful about putting any of that green into the sky, because I think you've done a great job with the clouds, and those clouds are not easy to do. As I said, I've been teaching this painting today, and a lot of people lose their mind into the cloud and paint it and paint it and paint it and paint it until the whole painting is doubles in weight. There's so much paint there. I think what's very effective is the way that these hills appear to sit in, the darker ones appear to sit in front of the lighter brown ones, and so that is a really great use of value contrast and of color temperature, and yeah, color temperature and value contrast to create depth in a painting. Let me just see. Nope. Okay. Let's continue on. Oh, I think I might have to sit down. I've been on my feet teaching all day. I think I have to. Oh, that feels better. Oh, my back. Not so sprightly and youthful anymore. Okay. So, here we've got A.Y. Jackson, Alexander Young Jackson's Aurora Borealis from 1927. There's Kathy's version, Molly's version, Paula's version, Richard's version. Okay. So maybe we'll start with Richard's one here. I think let's start with this. I think this is great, Richard. I don't quite remember this strip being down here on the bottom, but that's a fun little innovation, that little reflection we see down there. I really, the way that you've applied the paint is also really nice. It has like a real... It reminds me of like fresco painting, in that like fresco painting often had... I don't know if there's a name for... Come on. Just that there's a softness to that paint application that is very satisfying. Also, the way that you've really painted the stripes on in the sky like ribbons. Like, it really feels ribbon-like. I really feel that the edge of the Aurora Borealis is very physical, which is quite remarkable. The ground is really nice. These dark areas of the mountains in behind, that kind of glow of maybe the sun on the far side of the earth there over top of the hills is great. I don't have anything to add. I don't know if those little specks of paint or splatters or something got on there, but very nice. As I said, like, I don't remember that strip of... Maybe there is. Maybe there... Huh. But we'll see as we go forward here how other people treated that. Paula, again, with this filter. So... everything is working well here. I think what we do want, though, is for things to get a bit darker, a little bit more contrast. So I think what we want is the foreground to be mostly black with colors interspersed in there, like these little rocks, and the hillside being a bit darker. And then even in the sky, like the areas beyond the Aurora Borealis should be like a more muted purple, because right now actually this strip of ground along the bottom that is yellow like that really it's really the brightest part, so it really takes most of our attention, and yet it's not, you know, the Aurora Borealis in the sky is the thing that is the star of the show. It's the part of the painting that should be the most, the thing our eyes are drawn to. And so we want to kind of de-emphasize these background actors and make them not quite as immediately attention-grabbing. You know, I mean, because I heard somebody talking about that. Another YouTuber was talking about, you know, thinking of places like making certain colors like the star of the show, like as if they're the the Broadway star whose name is above on the top of the marquee, above the show, and other things are kind of like the backup singers or the understudies or whatever. So here, this water becomes the star, but it's just a reflection, right? It's whereas really, so we want all of that energy to be up in the sky and then muting everything below. I mean, there is a reflection, but maybe, yeah. I mean, and again, these are just things. I think, again, I'm always so impressed, Paula, that you're doing all of these paintings and that you do them just by eyeballing them. I think we also want the bottom here to be about as black as we can get it. Okay. Like here, this is what I mean with the sky being the star of the show here. Here's Molly's version, and boy, oh boy, does that sky look like it is just ablaze in emerald wildness. And you've got a great job of leaving a bit of that imprimatura in the water down below, kind of poking through, so it also reflects some of the sky. Same sort of thing, like, and I don't know how I painted the bottom. I would have tried to make this a little bit darker, more black, so that at least it's darker than everything else in behind. Because right now, this kind of reddish hill is more solid than the foreground. But the sky is really nice. Another thing too, and I'd have to look at the original A.Y. Jackson, is as probably keeping those diagonal lines going in the same direction, them all running parallel. Because here we've got lines kind of going this way, and then we've got some that are going that way, some that are going more vertical. So just something to think about, but ultimately really great. And then we have Kathy's one. Wow. Huh. It's interesting the way you've painted this by removing some of those kind of bright, almost fluorescent greens. It looks a little bit less Aurora Borealis-like. It looks a little bit more like just kind of really cool clouds that you might see at night. Not quite as wild of a natural phenomenon. So it doesn't bother me to look at the painting like this, but I do wonder what it would look like if we had a little bit more of that bright green. And so to make that bright kind of teal, well, not even teal, it's what is it? It's like it's got a bit of an like a light emerald. You take your warm yellow, or sorry, you take your cool yellow, white, and blue, and you sort of just a little bit of blue will turn that yellow and white from a tinted white yellow into a bit of like a greenish quality. And I think just a little bit of that on top of this painting could go a long way. And of course, you just also remember to put a little bit of that in the water and even a little bit in the rocks down below. And you'd be very close to making a masterpiece with that one. Okay. Wow, a lot of people did this one. This one is very popular. One second. I'm just gonna move this other camera down. Okay, hopefully that solves. Okay, so the thank you so much for reminding me here. Paul says, we're all sitting down. Why not you during painting time too? Use a warm cup to keep your tea warm too. So so here we've got Richard, Paula, Maria, Judy, Holly, Dolores, Kathy. So maybe we'll start with Kathy again this time. So here, you've done an excellent job, Kathy. I think what you've done here is with this little bit of orange kind of poking through on the mountains. It's very effective, because what that is most likely the imprimatura coming through the initial stain, or the plywood panel that they were painting on, pine, whatever surface they were using. Often they're probably using leftover wood from like boxes, kind of before cardboard was so ubiquitous. Things like vegetables would come in crates or box like made of wood. And so artists were quite clever about pulling that wood apart and turning them into canvases or boards to paint on. So once again, here we have Lawren Harris using, allowing for a little bit of that to come through, which is very effective in this scene, both for creating a balance where we see that same color in the water reflection as well as in the original mountain itself, but also it sort of looks a little bit like the raw mountain, uncovered, or uncovered from snow, right? It looks like there's snow in the mountains, and maybe that little bit of orange is like where snow is melted off, and we're seeing kind of like a like iron or rust deposits on the mountain, or maybe clumps of dried dead grass or something. So very effective. It's also funny how this couch kind of mirrors a similar color and even kind of similar brushstrokes to these trees. We got these same sort of browns that we see in the. So there's how it seems to expand a little bit beyond the boundary of the canvas, which I think is pretty funny. But anyway, let's. In terms of the painting itself, I think this turned out great. You can see how effective it is to have a little bit of grays and whites in the colors that are further into the background, because it pushes them further back, versus the closer things get towards the front of the painting, of the picture plane, the more black we put in there, or the darker the color, the more saturated the color is. And so that everything is working really well. Like you can see, because these trees are closer to us, the fact that they are darker makes them come, they're certainly closer to us than essentially anything else in that picture. What else do I say? I think this one is really effective. Okay, Dolores. Wow. How is that done? That's a watercolor, right? Yeah, that's got to be a watercolor. Oh, where are we? Really nice job. What could I offer here? Um, I don't know if there's anything I can offer. Um, yeah. It is really nice, these different zones that you've carved out here. We've got sort of a little bit of a drier plane over there, and kind of, because it's kind of, there's a little bit more shadow on the right-hand side of that landscape. Yeah, looks great. I'm trying to think, I feel like... I really like this minty green in the water. I think maybe I just feel like I want a bit more of that down here, to really give that water that really cold mountain mountain water quality. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about. And you know, it's again, it's personal preference, but I always just like saturated color. Everybody knows now about me. So I feel like I kind of wanted to see more color and less subtlety. But you've got a lot, like, in order to paint this painting, you've had to be really careful about, you know, how much water versus pigment you're using. And so, you know, that would have been a challenge working on this painting as a watercolor. So maybe, I mean, don't do anything, but just something to think about that, a little bit more color in the water down below. Wow, hollies. That is wild. I like that a lot. I like some of the liberties you've taken with that green kind of ribbon, like stretching right across the middle. Very fluid the way that this is painting. Reminds me a lot of like the way Edvard Munch painted. Edvard Munch did very similar things, even like what you've got going on up here, with little outlines around things. Everything was kind of like how would you call it? Like enclosed in nesting. It's like every shape of Edvard Munch's is like vacuum sealed or something. The whole thing is like each shape is, you know, vacuum sealed, and then there's another shape on top, and then that's vacuum sealed again. And there's an aspect of that that's appearing in here that is really effective. I mean, this is, yeah, I really like how this turned out. I mean, one of the things that I would say, I feel like the tops of those trees are kind of cut off. My instinct would be to put them back on top of that pink. Maybe? I mean, there's something so wild about the way this is painted that it kind of becomes abstract. But I really like that. That is really cool, Holly. Now, what were the other... Oh, sorry, okay, I wasn't even... Okay, that was... Okay, so you've been following my advice. Okay, so here's the original. That's also really nice. Okay, then here's that one, and then there's the finished one where you took it even further with that outlining. And you did exactly what I was saying, painting over... Wow. That's pretty cool. I mean, the one thing I would say is that the outlining, those darker outlines in the mountains, pull that mountain that's further back forward. I mean, ultimately what all that does is it's compressing the space. And so that back mountain is no longer kilometers or miles and miles and miles away, it's being yanked forward and sandwiched into the mountains in front of it, so that everything becomes very flat. And that's not meant to be an insult, because this, as many historians have said, the essentially flatness is the story of 20th century art, of everything becoming super, super flat. Leon says, it's 2 a.m. here and I'm off to bed. Lolly says, how did you all get so talented? Every single piece here is just stunningly cool. So I don't mind that compressing of space and pushing everything onto one plane. It just might be something to think about going forward. How, if you really want to, like, if you really like doing those outlines, and I've said that I really like outlining myself, I would have gone for a lighter purple here, like one of the ones that you've been using here in the interior. Same thing with all of these, is matching that outline, maybe just a little bit darker than everything else, but not maybe quite so dark. But this could also be, a breakthrough in terms of your own style. And if you were to, let's say, make 20 paintings with this same approach, then you would have established a solid style that could occupy you for the rest of your life. I don't know. I mean, these are all so strong. And there's Judy's version. That's great, Judy. Wow. Very effective. So that kind of goes to what I was just saying before about, using an outline that is maybe closer to some of the colors that are on the interior of that mountain. Because things are this whole painting is very stylized, but especially both here Judy and Holly have made this painting very stylized, with really kind of pushing those outlines. But Judy's here has more space in it than Holly's. Holly's is also very dynamic, but it appears it's way more surreal than Judy's. There's more. It is also very stylized, very, very Lawren Harris, but still readable as a landscape at the end of the day. Maria's, that's great too. So here, we can see even more subtlety with that mountain. Wow, these are also great, guys. Oh my goodness. And so the effect, oddly enough, in Maria, what is working really well with Maria's here is because that mountain is so subtle, and what it does is it pushes it further and further back, but because it's so big and yet it's so far back, it makes it seem that much bigger, right? Because if something is really big and yet we know it's really far away, then it's got to be huge, right? Think about like Mount Fuji, right? And all those great paintings and drawings, prints by all the great Japanese artists of all time. Like Mount Fuji just, it just looms over all of Japan, it seems, right? And you don't have to draw it that dark. Even, in fact, if it's a little bit like fuzzy and barely visible, it's like, man, that is a big mountain, because of the fact that it's so fuzzy. So this mountain looks bigger than any of the other mountains we've seen here because it seems so far away, right? So here is it seems big, but it's also fairly close. Whereas Marie is big, but really big, but because it's farther away. You know, it's same sort of thing. Like if you were, my daughter and I went to Seattle last weekend, and we went to a WNBA game, and you know, all those women who are playing basketball are giants. You know, they're all like 7 foot, 7'5", and you know, if they're on their own just walking around, you're like, wow, they're just like normal people. But then you see, you know, a referee or something standing next to them, and you're like, wow, either that referee is very short, or those basketball players are really, really tall. And so where am I going with that? I guess, yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we compare, if we use like scales and juxtaposition, like we put something short in the foreground with something tall, like, I mean, so one way to gauge the scale is these trees. And these trees are really small compared to the mountain. And so these trees being really well defined, really black, like dark in the foreground, versus a mountain that's less defined in the background, it makes that mountain just like gargantuan. Anyway, I should move on because I think I've just said the same thing 10 times. My goodness, Paula, that's great. Same sort of, I don't know there's much more I could say, except maybe I think these trees should be a little bit darker. I think they should certainly be darker than this purple hill here. So it's just a matter of maybe mixing a black, or taking actual black paint, putting a little bit of your green into that black, and painting. Maybe you don't have to paint over all of those, but maybe on one side of those trees there's more shadow. It looks great. Okay. Last but not least, Richard's here. So this is everything I was just saying, I think is working really well here, Richard. Same sort of thing I was saying with what made Maria's painting so effective. I think actually you've done a really, really nice job of this mountain, of really defining the space really well. Like this, like for instance, just this little area on the mountain, that looks like a shadow being cast by the mountain itself. Really nice work. Really nice attention to detail. I love these trees kind of framing that hill. Wow. These are great, you guys. This just blows my mind every day. Like last night, I was up to like 4 in the morning putting together today's episode. And I was just so excited. Like, even after I got everything finished, it took me like another 30-40 minutes to fall asleep, because I was just like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. All of these great artists are just cranking out amazing stuff. I mean, I just feel so lucky to be a part of this. I don't know what else I can say here. Really beautiful. I mean, it helps that the original painting by Lawren Harris is an absolute masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. But it's also one of those unique masterpieces that is relatively easy for us to paint, which I think it makes it even greater of a painting. You know, it's the same sort of thing we talk about in terms of design, or even more specifically like sports logos. Like if a little kid can draw your sports logo, you know you've got an exceptional design, right? Because there's some sports logos that look great, but if you tried, even if you've been a fan your whole life, and somebody gave you a paper and said draw it, you'd be like, I don't know how to draw that thing. It's so complicated. But you know, the really effective ones, you know, as a little kid, you'd be 5 years old and you can draw it on your backpack, and it might look a little bit clumsy, but it's still recognizable to anybody what it is. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. I hope I haven't missed anybody. Let me just see. We look at, yeah, we looked at that one by Holly as well. There's so much good stuff on this Facebook page. Oh my goodness. What an incredible archive. How are we doing with time? My goodness, okay. 2 hours. I think let's talk about the rest of the group of 7 next time. And I want to move on to the rest of your artworks. Selchuk says, Michael, I love your basic drawing class. I'm following it right now. Your enthusiasm just makes it so much fun to follow along. That's so sweet. Thank you for saying that. That is really, really generous. I really appreciate that. Lolly says, I agree, Michael. You've helped bring together one of the best communities on the internet, in my opinion. So many talented people, wonderful people, all in one place. Oh. I'm a rare loss for words. You know, I can talk endlessly about anything, but yeah, it's I'm very, very fortunate. So let's start talking about all the great stuff you guys have done outside of class. 232 pictures here. So we'll get through them all. We're going to open half of them at a time here. So I'm going to start. So there's a few things. I'm going to skip some of these. There's a lot of recent stuff from recent episodes, like for instance here the Rodrigue blue dog, but we won't talk about that in this episode because I want to show them all together and I want to give people an opportunity to catch up to that. So Zeynep, just in case you're like wondering how come we didn't talk, I will when we talk more about this. We'll group all that art together, just for people who are new to the channel and don't know kind of how I like to do things here. So let's start here with Soha. What are we looking at here? This is a beautiful painting. How is that done? This is acrylic, right? Oh. Wow. That is really neat. I like that one a lot. It reminds me a lot of Morandi. And remember we did a painting by Morandi? +3 years ago. And I'm a huge Morandi fan. I think like Morandi is sort of like a painter's painter. Somebody who spent his whole life and working on something super, super narrow, and and so he's beloved by other painters. Maybe not by the rest of the world, but within art circles, especially even when he was alive. You know, people are like, oh, it's just a guy who paints the little cups and bowls. But other artists are like, oh, I want one of those. I want to put that in my studio. I want that in my living room. And people are like, why would you want that? It's like, I think you got to paint to understand what's so cool about those paintings. So anyway, Soha kind of feel like you're evoking Giorgio Morandi, but with very different subject matter, and also strangely with these really bright colors. So I could see someone doing, maybe you doing a whole series of like beakers and test tubes, all with that painted in that Morandi kind of approach, but with these pops of bright color. Very cool. And you've done a great job with all these reflections and transparencies. Like, it's really neat to see that you've got this yellow beaker here in front of a pink beaker, but together they combine to create this kind of peachy orangey color. I mean, really nice. And we've got these reflections inside this. I mean, yeah, it's great. That's really cool. I like that. So here's a bunch of paintings by Sharia. Wow. Wow. These are great. Okay, so there's a bunch of paintings by Van Gogh that we've done in the past. So, I mean, that's great. Your Starry Night is really well done, very evocative. Well, great use of color. I like that a lot. Your Cafe Terrace at Night, also by Van Gogh. Really nice. What could I say here? I mean, I suppose maybe that tree might be a little bit darker, and there could be a little perspective issue down here with that doorway. Maybe this shouldn't be quite so bright yellow. Just a little nitpicky stuff, but otherwise, everything else turned out really well. I love this. I don't know what this is based on. I didn't see anything in your post. But boy, all that detail, that would have been tricky to do. I think it's great. I mean, these dancers, oh my goodness, look at how you've done the rendering on these arms and faces. This is acrylic. That's great. Really nice. Very nice and subtle. Wow. I think you could do a lot of these kinds of things, and I bet you could sell them too. I think you should strongly consider making more of these. I mean, I don't know if this is based on someone else's work or this is entirely from your own imagination. Wow, I like these. Wow. That is beautiful. Is that based on a Renoir painting? Or a Monet? Or Manet? I know they did do lots of paintings like this on those rivers on the outskirts of Paris, like the Seine River, or these tributaries, and like their because back in the day, before there were cars flying everywhere, people used to get around on boats a lot. It was the fastest, most efficient form of transportation, because riding a horse-drawn carriage was bumpy, and not every road was passable. Sometimes it gets stuck in the mud, and sometimes in some places there were starting to be trains built, but the trains certainly didn't go everywhere. So I mean, for the vast majority of human life, getting around on boats, even on up and down rivers, was a major form of transportation. And the Impressionists were, they seem to have. There's a lot of transportation themes in Impressionist painting. Maybe just unconsciously, maybe it's because transportation is changing because of the Industrial Revolution, and they're just documenting these new things that they're seeing around them more and more. I don't know, but transportation is a. I don't. Maybe I don't know if anyone's written about that, but there seems like somebody must have written something about that. I'm certainly not a genius who just came up with that. Anyway, I think this is really nice. So one thing I'm wondering is the way the water is working down here. So you have like horizontal water in the middle of the picture, here on the sides and here, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes, or sorry, it goes down. So everything's kind of going this way, and then all of a sudden we get under this boat, and it just sort of, it makes it kind of look like this boat is on the precipice of some sort of like waterfall, or some kind of like a dam or a dike or something that is causing the water to, you know, go down like a concrete slope or something. So correcting that would be, you'd have to kind of paint more horizontal lines of the water there, or turn them into like a bush or something down there. Now again, who knows, you might say, well, this is exactly the way Monet painted this picture, so maybe you should look it up and stop criticizing me. It's just because these great artists of the past made a lot of excellent paintings doesn't mean they might have made a few strange missteps over the years. As every, there's lots of great celebrities who fall flat on their face every day. That's like our lives. That's basically the news, is all just celebrities that have done themselves, shot themselves in the foot. Anyway, also this tree on the left, what are we looking at here? My instinct would be to have like vertical grass to counter the horizontal lines of the background. Lolly says, don't forget to hit the like button, everyone. And Aziz says, hey, it's been a long time. That's awesome. I'm glad to see you in the chat, Aziz. Then we'll look at this here. Sharia, this is beautiful. I love the colors in your application of paint for Van Gogh's bedroom here. I mean, this is like, the colors are even more saturated and vibrant than Van Gogh himself applied. That's, why am I gonna, yeah, I mean, the only minor little criticisms I have would be just these diagonal lines on the floor. Is just trying to keep them you see how they're kind of pointing towards a center, right? Which that center is somewhere up here, right? So we've got like, that one seems to be nice. Think of like the bed here. We should have these lines, instead of sort of going down, right? Or they're kind of going a little bit more vertical, is they should be going down on an angle a little bit more, so that they're all equally going away, spreading out, fanning out at an equal amount. Like, same sort of thing here on the left, right? Instead of like, we've got these lines and they're all kind of going outward, that one should also continue in that vein. Very minor quibble. I mean, considering how well everything else is working here, take it all with a grain of salt, but really big, outstanding achievement. Great job. My goodness. Okay, what else are we looking at here? I don't think I got a painting by Shelley here today, but uploaded this of Quetico Provincial Park. I just gotta look. Oh, it's in Ontario. Oh, it's south there. Oh, or it's east. Sorry, I love these parks, so. Goodness, look at these vast expanses. Okay. So I've been in this area here. Dryden, my oldest best friend, his family's got a cabin in Dryden, and he grew up there, and in Kenora. I went on tour with a band that performed there in Thunder Bay, and so I'm sure we would. Well, we probably didn't drive. We probably went straight across from down the Trans-Canada there, but anyway. I appreciate you sharing that, Shelley, and how Paul Kane painted in that area. So did not know Paul came to that area. Well, Paul Kane also went all the way, well, not all, did he go all the way across Canada? It certainly went to, well, he certainly went to Fort Edmonton, because that's one of the paintings we made. I don't know if he made it all the way to the west coast, though. To think about that, but that, I mean, you go back and watch that episode, or just the recap on his biography, or there's some great little documentaries on Paul Kane. What a fascinating fellow. I'd say Paul Kane is, well, I was gonna say like the Canadian Lewis and Clark, but he was an artist and not really an explorer. Oh, goodness, there's another great American... anyway, let's move on. There's, I'm trying to think of... So here's Sanju. Sanju has been busy. So we got a lot of stuff from Sanju. So we've got some older artworks from previous classes here. So we've got David Hockney's dogs. That turned out great. We have David Hockney, or sorry, Andy Warhol's soup can and banana. Wow. My goal for the holidays is to do 2 paintings and 1 drawing per week. I believe that discipline and consistency are very important. Yes, that is true. Very true. That's great. So he says, this is my first portrait. It was a challenging one. I made many mistakes in drawing and painting, but it's not the end of the world. So this is an Alex Katz painting that we did. I really like the original a lot. I think you've done a great job. I think where things maybe got a little bit muddy is with these eyes. And then the eyes are just a little bit big. But it wouldn't be too hard to fix this painting, or now that you know how to do it, I'm sure you could do a much better version. But, I mean, just the fact that you got the colors so accurate is also very, very very rewarding. Should be, anyway. Here's your version of Matisse's painting Goldfish. Is that what it's called? Just gold. Still, I think it's Still Life with Goldfish, I think is what it's called. And this is again one of our first 4 or 5 episodes we did 3 years ago. Wow. Looks great. Excellent job. I don't know what else I can say about that. Here's your David Hockney's. Ooh. I like your little innovation to put those little dots inside those black lines. That is cool. Hey, that could be a really interesting way to sort of create your own little style. If you really like doing painting in this style, imagine you did figures that had little white dot, or thick black outlines with little white dots inside. Hey, that would be enough to really establish a strong style for yourself. Yeah. That's also very cool. So this was this a Mary Cassatt painting? I'm pretty sure it is. Again, this is 3 years ago. We painted this one here. I'm pretty sure this is Mary Cassatt. Yeah, I think you noticed here that there's maybe a few things that you say, there's still lots to improve on and learn. And you're going to take a few weeks off from painting and focus on drawing. And I'm clearly, because this is one of the earliest works you put up here, Sanju, that clearly you like improving by leaps and bounds week after week after week. And that's the benefit of really devoting yourself to something for a while. Like, you can really just see the improvement happening so quickly. It should be so satisfying to see that. Yeah. So there's a few other things that you've posted to Facebook that I want to come back to. We're going to end on, Sanju, so don't worry, I haven't forgotten some of this great stuff that you also posted. I just think I want to come back and talk about that later, just as a really nice kind of end to today's episode. Same with Sandra here. So let's look at Ryan's work here. So Ryan has been doing the drawing course and has uploaded a bunch of things that they've done recently in the sketchbook form, and these eyes, class 18, I guess that's what it was. Again, so this is the free drawing course, introductory drawing course I did here on YouTube. It's still available to anybody to watch and to follow along to. Hundreds of thousands of people have taken that course, and I get emails every day from people who found it really helpful. So, hey, if you want to get better at painting, oddly enough, learning how to draw or getting better at drawing would really, really help your painting practice. Wow. What am I looking at here? That's wild. I also did a little bit of their own anatomy research. These are great. Wow. Ryan says, I recently discovered the beginner's drawing course on YouTube, and I thought I would join the group while still doing the course. Wow. This is great. Yeah, I love it. I mean, could we add a little bit more contrast by darkening some places a little bit more? Sure. Because you just think of the white of the page is like the highlight. That's the brightest area. So anything else should be darker to really make it pop. And you may want to only leave just a little bit of the page blank, because otherwise it looks like you're looking at it like the sun is falling out of orbit. You know, everything's just so bright. So putting some strong contrast in there would really help pop the flowers forward. What's this? Uninvited entry and invited entry. What kind of building has an uninvited entrance? That's funny. Now I feel like, is that a puzzle, or is this from from the movie Zoolander or something? Here's some shading and warm up stuff. Huh. Cool. Great job on rendering. Really good. Yeah. That's great. Not easy to do. That's pretty impressive. I like you had the grid there and then you erased once you've had all those lines in place. Excellent. Wow. So this might have been based on a Morandi painting we did, or I'm not sure, but that turned out great. Maybe it was Picasso did that. I mean, the one thing I would just say, Brian, is to consider using more, like drawing a little bit bigger in your sketchbook or for these classes. I know you might say, like, wow, well, I'm going to go through a whole sketchbook every 5 or 6 episodes. It's like, yeah. The thing is that when you draw bigger, you reveal the mistakes more clearly. And you're like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want it to look good. And it's like, yeah, but then you're hiding. Who are you hiding those mistakes from? Really, from yourself. So when you draw a little bit bigger, any kind of problems are amplified, which also makes it easier for me and for yourself in particular to see clearly what's working and what's not. Versus when things get small, you know, it's great because things will usually look pretty good when they're really small, and so it can be hard to see what's working, what's not working. And so anybody could take that advice and just think, okay, well, I can make a bunch of little tiny things, and they're gonna kind of automatically look pretty good. Or if I try to do something a little bit bigger, it's a little more challenging. That's the problem faced by muralists and people who are making big canvases. They're so much bigger that sometimes when you get up close, it can fall apart, which is actually not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's kind of, I've seen lots of great paintings throughout history, like by some of the great, French revolutionary era painters like Jacques-Louis David and Theodore Géricault and Eugène Delacroix often made these like really big paintings, and you get up close and it just looks like they painted it with like a house painting brush, and big just like splatters and drips all over the place. You're thinking like, this was made in the like mid 1700s. I can't believe it's so sloppy up close. It's because a lot of those paintings weren't meant to be that close. Often they'd be hung high and far away, and you weren't able to get as close as you can, at the Louvre or something now, where you can stand with your nose right up to the surface almost. Ryan here, that's great. These dogs, that's fantastic. Yeah, again, like these dogs here, I encourage people to draw each one of those on a full-sized piece of paper, because these look really good here, but if we were drawing them bigger, I think it would be a bigger challenge for you for sure. Like, that looks great. This hand is really, that's fantastic. And part of it is just because you're drawing bigger. I love these shadows, like the shadow your thumb cast onto your forefinger, and then the shadow your forefinger's casting onto your middle finger, right? Is that forefinger, middle finger, index finger, pinky finger? Or what's the index finger? Is the index the same as your forefinger? Anyway, does it really matter, Michael? A couple things too. So these dark lines here, those to me look more like scars or maybe even cuts on your hand, which maybe that's what they are. They look like that more so than wrinkles or folds, because they're so dark. right? And because they're so sharp and dark, not just kind of gets dark and lighter, but they are like black. So it makes it, because they're so dark, it makes it look like maybe you're cutting into that surface of your hand, breaking the skin or something. Versus a lot of the other ones are more subtle. It's not bad. It does leap out a little bit. Like one of the things, if you, and you can do this whether you're painting or drawing, is if you look at your artwork and squint at it. Like when I do that, the things that, all the details disappear, like all the lines inside the hand, those disappear. And what I see is sort of like just a few things, like this area between the thumb and index finger, right here between, on the middle finger, these outlines on the left side of the hand, and that fold here, or cuts. So yeah, that's one of those things. It's very hard to get the right balance. These are great. Wow, you're really drawing that whole thing out, aren't you? Wow, excellent. Really cool. Great job, Ryan. Okay, I am going to plow ahead here. Where do I want to go? Just go to Robbins. What am I looking at here? Master study of painting by artist Lady Churchman called One Taste. I really love this painting. What do I say here? Let's look up. That's a wild painting. So this is the original painting. We see all these sort of star clusters and galaxies all over the place. Wow, you did a pretty darn good job. That's your version. I mean, what a bizarre painting the original one is, and you've done an excellent job of conveying that. Let's just look at the original real quick. I mean, I do think the original artist has done some pretty amazing things with some of these colors, but I also think you've done a pretty good job of capturing it. Especially, these tomato plants growing down here that are all tied and amazing. That's great. Okay, I'm going to move on, but I'm really impressed. I like that you're doing your own master study of an artist that you really admired. That makes me really happy. So Ricky says, I started watching the beginner's drawing lessons. I'm actually having more fun than I thought learning fundamentals. We only have a few of your images here. Excuse me. Wow, that's an excellent drawing of a hand. So this is, again, another great example of the fact that the white paper is a highlight, right? That's where the brightest light is in terms of the world of a drawing. So if you're drawing your hand, what often people do is they just sort of like outline the hand and they do a little bit of shading on maybe some of the sides, and the rest of it is just left white. And I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody whose hand is as white as a piece of paper. At the very least, it's going to be a little bit darker, a little bit more gray, and you might have a few little parts, like if you're drawing the backside of your hand, maybe a couple little reflections on your fingernails. But I mean, even just look at this. Like, what about this hand is white? I mean, even those reflections on my fingernail, I'd be hard-pressed to say that's white. And then we look at the same side. I don't know if there's anything white. Maybe a couple of little specks of white as highlights. So what I love here, Ricky, is how you've gone and put a shading all over your entire hand. Very few people do that, even though I'm always encouraging people to do it, but very few people do. So as from a teacher, that's very exciting to see someone who listens. I wish all my classes at Emily Carr University were full of people who listen. I'm starting to get ready for the fall already. It seems like it's come to just like the meeting schedule for the university is out. It's like, oh, only one more month before I'm back on camp. I mean, I really enjoy teaching. I love it, but it's also nice to have a little bit of a summer vacation, isn't it? Here's Richard's painting. Says, a bit of a Sunday morning fun. First is a self-portrait I did in a senior's art class in 2019 before taking Michael's painting classes. And then here's the second portrait. It's the same portrait, but after taking Michael's painting classes. Can you spot the difference? I don't know. This is tricky. I don't know. Anybody else see a difference? I don't. Oh, it's the eyelids. That's the thing. The eyelids. Here, this guy looks a little bit sleepier. Other than that, I don't know. Is there something am I missing something? Maybe it's in the collar of his turtleneck. I don't know. You tell me, guys. I don't see if I notice anything. I do think this is very funny. Now, that looks like a piece of paper that you've cut out. Even the eyelids. The eyelids look like they're paper cutouts as well as this mustache. That's a fun thing. I mentioned earlier that same sort of activity. Like, if you're a little bit afraid to put, like, you're not sure if this painting needs this color or this shape here, and you're afraid of applying paint directly onto the surface, and you're worried that it might radically change the painting, you can do here what Richard did, which is to cut out some paper and stick it in place. If it's colored paper, you just cut it out. If you want, you could take paper and paint it, mix a color and paint it over its surface, blow dry it, cut it out and put it in. And sometimes, that can be really helpful because you can really see very clearly what it might look like if you were to then paint into those areas. Or, I mean, there's certainly also nothing wrong with gluing down paper into a painting. We call that a mixed media. It goes from just being acrylic or oil or watercolor on canvas or paper to, we would say, a mixed media artwork, where we're mixing different materials together on one artwork, like paint and glue and paper, etc. Yeah, so Deborah says, yes, he cut out paper cutouts. A few more here. So, Richard said, something abstract for Monday morning, I call it 35.iv. Inspired by Mozart's 35th Symphony, 4th movement. Ah, okay, interesting. So Richard sent this in, and then kind of cropped and zoomed into a few areas. So it might look a little bit blurry as we blow them up. But this is also an interesting little exercise, is to make a painting, and then sometimes the entire painting doesn't turn out the way you want, but sometimes there are parts of it that you're like, ooh, what if I make this painting again, but I just focus in on that little part, that part that I like the most. There's nothing wrong with doing that, right? Like, maybe, you know, let's say you want to paint the Mona Lisa. Maybe you don't want to paint like the full Mona Lisa with her hands in the picture. You just want her face. Or maybe you just want her lips or her eye or one eye, right? Or even you take her right out and you just paint the background that's in behind her, which is also a very interesting part of that painting. So those can be like really fun little areas to play with. Okay. I love this. This is great. I'm so glad you did this, Richard. So we did a whole episode on Frank Johnson back in January, I think. And one of the paintings I really liked and wanted to do was this painting of these pilots who are training in Ontario during World War One. And it's such a dynamic picture, and it's you can see why Frank Johnson left the Group of Seven relatively soon after it began, because he was a little bit of like the odd man out. You know, he did paintings like this where he did a lot of aviation artwork. There was the Group of Seven focused on landscapes predominantly, and here he's focusing on the landscape, but he's doing it from a radically different angle. Probably one of the very first persons to paint a landscape from above like this. I mean, and very few people still to this day. I mean, I really can't think of very many people besides him and myself, really, to have done something like this. So I'm so glad that you found this image in the Dropbox folder and tried to paint this painting. You've done a great job. I mean, I think, you know, the water on the right here is a little bit empty of detail. Like, I think it might have been nice to see a little bit of, like, a few waves approaching the water. And it's not a huge deal. I mean, this painting looks really cool either way. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I look at this, you know, actually it's also really nice the way that I see the shadows over the land here from the clouds is really nice. I mean, I have so many thoughts about this painting. They really have nothing to do with painting, but just about like the magic of flight, etc., you know, during this period of time. We'll talk about that later on. We've got a few more we'll talk about later on. Okay, Ratna. Oh, so this is a Robert Oppenheimer themed painting, because talking about the Hindu scripture, that famous quote of "Now I've become death" or whatever. Really nice. I mean, it's you're right on very topical and on the pulse of the moment right now, since Oppenheimer just opened a few days ago. It's neat that you're doing something that's happening right now in the world. Deborah says, yes, Michael, he agrees with you. Richard agrees that he's right here watching with me. That's awesome. I like that a lot. Way to go, Ratna. That's wild. Like those colors too. I like this green and yellow. Like it has almost a radioactive quality to it, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, like this. You know, radiation radiating from the painting. It's a very clever use of color here. I mean, this is the kind of thing that if you feel that this is something you're really into, this is like illustration could be something you could submit this kind of thing to a magazine, or a book, or a online publication, newspaper. They could, like something like the New Yorker, for instance. They always have little illustrations throughout their magazine, and they could use stuff like that for sure. So putting together a portfolio would probably be a good idea. Ratna says random portraits. Cool. I wonder what that's from. That's great too. I mean, what's really nice is you really feel the light kind of hitting that cheek. Wow. Happy summer solstice. That's great. It's very abstract. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say, well, maybe we could darken, have more contrast in here, refine and define things more. But that might be not necessarily what you want to go for. Maybe you want a little bit more subtlety, ambiguity here. Because, like, really, without these stems underneath these flowers, it might be hard to tell that these are indeed flowers. And not that you need, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways artists illustrate things, and so it doesn't necessarily need to be, I mean, I like riding that line between recognizable and abstract. Kayla Lily and Iris collection, watercolor on paper. These are cool, very confident brush strokes. Just laying a brush stroke in, letting it dry, maybe doing a little bit more adding to it afterwards. Very cool. Here's some lilies, right? Here's Ratna visiting Van Gogh's bedroom in Arles in the museum. I don't know if you went to France to sit in that location, but I've been to the Yellow House in Arles, which no longer exists. But there is a little Van Gogh museum that there. I don't know, maybe that was the same place. Or what do we look? Because you've got your backpack or your bag here, or maybe your dog is in that bag. I just noticed. Maybe this isn't at the Van Gogh Center or museum in Arles. I don't know. Not sure I know what I'm looking at. Why did I write Philomena? And yet this is Liam. I don't know. I might have got that wrong. Because here's Philomena. How? So I apologize if this is Liam's work. Or no, if it's signed Hal. So maybe somebody else took a picture and posted it online. Is that what happened? A few things I really like. I love that you've got this collage of musical notation here on the left, and that you've got this photocopy that you've collaged into the painting. So those are really, the keys of the piano are fairly well done. Maybe there'd be another line or two underneath the neck of the guitar. Do I have any comments? I don't think so. Very cool. This one as well. I think that's pretty cool. This, oops. So it looks like there was some sort of texture underneath, some sort of like a brick pattern or something. Now I wonder, was that a painting that was there before and you painted over it to make room for this artwork, which is beautiful, by the way? Or did you do that deliberately? A lot of artists do things like that deliberately. The rendering of this vase shape is really well done. The flowers are gorgeous. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Yeah, great. Wow. So I don't know what kind of animal, if that's like a wolf or Siberian husky or something. But really nice sketch. What else can I offer about it? I mean, I would say, the one thing I would say is, you know, when you're doing that kind of shading is, there's often always the compulsion to want to go as quickly as possible and just kind of scribble things in. And that can work, but I think, and depending on the outcome for this artwork, you know, if it's just kind of a silly thing, then yeah, scribble it in. But maybe being a bit more deliberate and like literally taking your pencil and kind of following a few lines could be a good strategy. It can be super time consuming too, and would also maybe produce a different effect. So maybe I should just take my word back. Is it just me, or do I keep seeing like numbers and things? Like I feel like I see something like 1980 or something in those little circles down there, or I don't know, is it Vivian or something down here? Anyway, I'm probably just very overtired. Wow, that is cool. So a very, very different approach here to this cafe terrace at night. There's another one. So you hear Sharia has a very intensely vibrant color. Like all of those windows just are glowing with light. And I really like that about this painting. But it also makes it like a very unique approach, as opposed to where did my here. Yeah, it could be more different. That one, this one, it's almost like the other one I've said like maybe it could be a little bit darker. This one I feel like it could be a little bit brighter. Right, the lights from underneath this cafe I think should be bolder. Right now, because they're not as strong, it's not there's not really a focal point in this painting, whereas really the focal point is kind of where this maitre d' or waiter is standing. I would say that, and maybe the underside of the awning where the light is shining on it. So I think a little bit of just of color undiluted or unmixed with other colors, just right out of the tube, like a cold yellow with some white in it underneath there. Make that pop. Because right now there's just maybe a little bit too much browns and grays, all of which are great. I think I've said many times that most great paintings are mostly comprised in warm and brown. The difference is they use that as a counterbalance to very, very bright colors. So you can use very, very bright colors, but just balance them out with darker colors. Or you can use a lot of darker colors and balance that out with a couple of super saturated colors. That's great. Okay, we got a bunch by Paula here, but those are for upcoming classes, so I'm gonna pass on. Well, I don't see anything here, Paula, that isn't coming up soon, because obviously you paint along to everything we do. So I do see your name here with a whole bunch of your work, but I think we're just going to move on. So here's Pascaline, says I started J. DeFeo's painting, but it ended up more like Jean-Paul Riopel than I thought. It's so much fun and like to result. So this painting is similar to the painting that you see me applying paint on at the end of the night sometimes. It's this guy here. It's right, or that side, depending on how you want to. But it's also, you can see it's like it's taller than my nose, right? I love playing with that kind of texture on there. That is just, it's just so satisfying seeing that build up. So this is just recycling paint at the end of the night and applying it onto that painting to slowly build it up higher and higher. And so Pascaline tried doing something similar, but she says it turned out a little bit more like Jean-Paul Riopel as opposed to J. DeFeo's painting. I love all of this squeezed, goopy paint. You should show it another one where after it dried, it appears a little bit of the yellow, and blue have kind of fallen by the wayside a bit. That's one of the crazy things with acrylic paint is how it changes depending on the temperature. Pascaline here says a rough watercolor did yesterday's study of Gustav Klimt's The Lady with the Fan. So there's that one, and then is there a difference here? I don't think there's a difference. I think it's just lighting is so, and I think this one is, oops. I think I prefer the little bit warmer version here. Wow, that is really nice. Way to go, Pascaline. It's almost like you've got a like a gold leaf or something in the background. I wonder what color you use to paint that gold. It could just be like a brown, like a warm brown that's predominantly yellow will give you something similar to that, and that kind of looks like gold. That's wild. My own version of the Three Sunflowers by Van Gogh. What I think is, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really effective things here. The reflections on the vase, I think, are spectacular. And on the table, all of these little specks of color are fantastic. Hollis's. That's not mine. Someone else's. Van Gogh's Cafe. Oh, I didn't think it was yours, Paula. Which one are you talking about? This one's by Philomena. Maybe I accidentally said Paula, but the name is at the top there. Sorry for any confusion there, Paula. Yeah, I really like the vase in particular is really sweet. The fact that the leaves are also green and the bottle is green, I would probably have tried to make it a little bit different. You could say, well, it was a green vase. What am I supposed to do? Well, you know, it doesn't have to mean that you paint it green. You could paint it purple or baby blue or dark navy blue or crimson red. I mean, there are lots of different options. Let me see. I am starting to get kind of tired, and I don't want to shortchange anybody by trying to power through this and not giving 100% to people while I'm looking at work that people have spent so hard working on. So I think what I'm going to do is talk a little bit more about a few more people here and then wrap up in the next like 5-10 minutes. And then schedule another one of these for, let's do next Sunday. Because, yeah, it took me so long yesterday to put all of your works together into this format. And as I said, I was up till about 5 in the morning, and then I taught I was up at 7:30. So I'm running on a little bit of fumes here. So and the work just gets better and better and better. So I feel like it's just not fair to everybody to have some people who I spoke about their work at the beginning when I had all my full faculties, if I've ever had my full faculties, and then to shortchange people here. But let's finish here. Or Pascaline, you did a lot. Okay, as I'm looking up here, there's a lot more you've done here, Pascaline. Maybe then, yeah. Well, let's continue next week. I'll pick up here, and what I do want to do though is come back to someone I think who's done something really amazing that I want to highlight. So what I think is absolutely just super touching and amazing is the work that Sanju has been doing, who's been teaching children, these 11-year-old children at school, and they only have 40 minutes a day to work on maybe something outside of the classroom projects, and wanted to introduce artworks into the classroom. And these are some of the results. And I just think this is amazing. There's very few teachers who decide that they're going to sneak a little bit of art into their regular classroom times. Because often a lot of other teachers don't feel confident, maybe haven't had art classes themselves, and don't really feel confident about just talking about art or teaching children art when they themselves don't know how to do it. And ends up with kids who don't get this opportunity to learn. And so I'm just so excited, Sanju, that you've really kind of put yourself out there. Certainly you've been getting better and better and better over just the past like 3 or 4 months. You've been cranking out so much work, and that you can see the joy on the faces of these kids who you're introducing all of this work to. And oh my goodness, just look at how happy they are. That is just like, that's so exciting. Like, let's take a look at a few more here. That's great. So they're doing some Van Gogh things, different drawings. Wow. To think, like, you know, a couple of these kids could end up growing up and making art just from this little gift that you've given them in class. That some of them might have found a different way of expressing themselves that they didn't think they had in them, or didn't even know was possible before. I'm such a huge admirer. Like, that makes me really, really excited. I'm so inspired by this, Sanju. I really hope this, like, I think you're transforming lives absolutely 100%. And these kids don't know how lucky they are to have someone like you who's going to all that extra effort to teach themselves how to paint, and then to share that passion and love for art with these little kids. Like, how can you not be just so overjoyed by that? Also, you included this. I didn't want to forget this too. Just before I forget, I don't know what this is. This is my own original creation. It's an intuitive painting that I did just for fun. I wonder. I'm the last person who's going to be able to understand what these equations mean, if they do mean anything at all, or if they're just abstractions or fun little things, or maybe they say something, or this unlocks the secret of the universe. I don't know. But there's a lot of great stuff going on here, Sanju, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm so proud of everybody for all the incredible work that you guys have done. So I think for now, that's where I'm going to leave things today. And we'll come back next week, and we'll continue. We'll pick up where we left off. I'll make a few notes here. And well done, everybody. I'm so excited to see the achievements that you guys have made over just such a short period of time. Especially those of you that are relatively new to the channel. So a couple of just little quick things that I just want to point out is, I strongly encourage, if you're watching now and you're not a member of the Facebook page, please join the Facebook page and upload your artwork to the group there so that we can look at it next week. As a reminder, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can send this link to your friends and family. If there's other people like, where did you learn how to paint? Just send them a quick little link to the channel. Is super helpful. And if you found anything that we've discussed over the past past 3, almost 4 hours now, to be useful or inspiring, please consider leaving a $1 donation through PayPal, through Super Chat, a couple $1 million through e-transfer. I won't complain, even though it's not $10 million. $1 million is more than fine. Or send an old-fashioned check in the mail. You can contact me through the Facebook group or my website. All those links are down in the description below. So until next weekend, enjoy the rest of your week. And just know that you're doing the world a great favor by making art, and sharing that with the world inspires other people to take action on their own dreams. So I am eternally grateful to be part of this incredible community. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in 7 days. Until then, have a great night or morning or evening, afternoon, wherever you are on our beautiful planet. Know that you're loved. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.